The blood-slick tracks in the dust told a story no woman should have to write. Lillian Forrester dragged herself another foot across the blistering Dakota Territory soil, her torn dress leaving a crimson trail behind her. The wagons, her family's wagons, had disappeared over the horizon hours ago. They hadn't even looked back when they'd left her for dead after the Sioux attack that morning, her own kin fleeing toward Deadwood without her. The merciless August sun of 1876 beat down as Lillian's parched lips formed silent prayers. She'd survived the attack only to be abandoned. The irony might have made her laugh if her ribs didn't scream with every shallow breath. A cloud of dust appeared in the distance. Lillian's heart raced. Indians returning to finish what they'd started, or perhaps her family, conscience-stricken, coming back for her? She closed her eyes, too weak to run, too stubborn to die. The rhythmic pounding of hooves grew closer. A single rider. "Sweet Jesus," a deep voice murmured. Through swollen eyes, Lillian made out the silhouette of a man dismounting from a chestnut stallion. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore a dust-covered duster and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. "Miss? Can you hear me?" His voice was gentle despite its roughness. Lillian tried to speak, but only a dry rasp escaped her throat. The stranger knelt beside her, removing his bandana and pressing it to a wound on her arm she hadn't even realized was bleeding. "I'm Lucas Nash," he said, carefully examining her injuries. "I'm going to help you, miss. You're safe now." Lillian managed to whisper, "They left me. My own family." Lucas's jaw tightened as he glanced at the wagon tracks leading away. "Abandoned by your own blood?" He shook his head. "What kind of people?" He didn't finish the thought. With surprising tenderness for hands so calloused, he lifted Lillian onto his horse. "My cabin's not far. We'll get you patched up." As they rode, Lillian drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the steady heartbeat against her back and strong arms keeping her secure. When she woke fully, she was lying on a rough-hewn bed, her wounds cleaned and bandaged. The cabin was small but neat, with a pot bubbling over the fire. Lucas appeared in her line of sight. In the cabin's light, she could see him clearly for the first time, mid-30s, with sun-weathered skin, intelligent hazel eyes, and a scar running along his jawline. Not conventionally handsome, but with a face that spoke of character and quiet strength. "You've been out since yesterday," he said, offering her water. "Thought I might lose you a couple times." "Thank you," Lillian whispered. "I'm Lillian Forrester." "Forrester," he repeated, his expression darkening. "Those were Forrester wagons I passed 3 days back, headed for Deadwood. Your kin." Lillian nodded weakly. "My uncle's family. After my parents died, they were all I had left. They took me in, but," she swallowed hard. "When the Indians attacked, I was thrown from the wagon. I saw them look back, then whip the horses harder." Lucas's hands clenched. "No man leaves family behind, not ever." Over the next days, as Lillian's strength gradually returned, she learned Lucas was a former cavalry scout who'd settled in the hills outside Deadwood. He hunted, trapped, and occasionally guided newcomers through the territory. He lived alone, speaking little about his past, except to mention he had lost his wife to cholera years before. A week after he'd found her, Lillian was able to sit up and join him for supper. "I should be well enough to travel to Deadwood soon," she said, though the thought of facing her family filled her with dread. Lucas set down his fork. "And what then? Your uncle left you for dead." "I have nowhere else to go." Lillian looked down at her hands. "No money, no possessions." "Stay," Lucas said abruptly. The word hung in the air between them. He cleared his throat. "I mean, until you're fully healed. No need to rush." As autumn painted the hills in gold and crimson, Lillian's body healed faster than her heart. She took over cooking and mending, grateful to contribute something to the man who'd saved her life. They settled into a cautious routine, two wounded souls circling each other like wary deer. One evening, as they sat before the fire, Lucas broke their comfortable silence. "Your family might be looking for you." Lillian laughed without humor. "They think I'm dead, Lucas, and maybe that's better than knowing they abandoned me. Still, people in town might recognize you if we..." "If we what?" Lillian asked when he didn't continue. Lucas stared into the flames. "I ride into Deadwood tomorrow for supplies. You could come if you're feeling strong enough." The next day, mounted behind Lucas on his stallion, Lillian felt both excitement and trepidation as the ramshackle buildings of Deadwood came into view. The mining boom had transformed what had been a simple camp into a bustling town, teeming with prospectors, gamblers, and those hoping to profit from both. As they rode down the main street, past saloons and hastily constructed shops, Lillian kept her face partially hidden beneath a borrowed hat. The thought of encountering her uncle's family terrified her. At the general store, the proprietor greeted Lucas warmly. "Nash, thought the mountains might have swallowed you whole. Been months." His curious gaze shifted to Lillian. "This is Miss Forrester," Lucas said, his hand protective at the small of her back. "She's staying at my place for a while." The storekeeper's eyebrows shot upward. "Is that so? Well, ain't that interesting?" Word spread through the small town like wildfire. As they gathered supplies, Lillian felt eyes following them, whispers trailing in their wake. In a community starved for gossip, a solitary trapper returning with a young woman was prime fodder. Outside the assayer's office, Lillian froze. There, climbing into a wagon, was her cousin Thomas. He hadn't seen her yet, but panic seized her lungs. Lucas followed her gaze. "That him? Your kin?" When she nodded, his expression hardened. He started forward, but Lillian grabbed his arm. "Please don't, I'm not ready." Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but they don't get to pretend nothing happened." They completed their errands quickly, but as they mounted to leave, a voice called out, "Lillian, good God, is that you?" Her Uncle Gerald stood in the street, face pale as if seeing a ghost. Behind him, her Aunt Martha clutched at her shawl, eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," Martha whispered. "We saw you die." "You saw me fall," Lillian corrected, finding strength in Lucas's solid presence behind her. "You chose not to stop." Gerald took a step forward. "Now, Lillian, you don't understand. The Indians were upon us." "Don't," Lucas interrupted, his voice cold as December steel. "Don't you dare justify leaving her to die." "And who might you be?" Gerald demanded, puffing up with manufactured outrage. "The man who found her crawling through the dirt with wounds that should have killed her," Lucas answered. "The man who didn't leave her behind." A small crowd had gathered, watching the confrontation with undisguised interest. Lillian felt the weight of their stares, but found she no longer cared. "You'll come with us now, of course," Gerald said, reaching for Lillian's arm. "You belong with family." Lucas stepped between them. "She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go." "This is none of your concern, sir," Gerald sputtered. "It became my concern when I found her half dead because of you," Lucas said evenly. "Lillian makes her own choices now." Lillian looked between the uncle who'd abandoned her and the stranger who'd saved her. The choice wasn't difficult. "I'm staying with Lucas." The ride back to the cabin was silent, both lost in thought. Only when they were unpacking their supplies did Lucas speak. "I meant what I said. You choose where you go, what you do. I won't hold you." Lillian set down a sack of flour. "And if I choose to stay?" "Then folks will talk," Lucas said bluntly. "A woman living with a man who isn't her husband, it'll mark you in ways that aren't fair." "I've never much cared for what's fair," Lillian replied. "Fair would have been my family stopping for me. Fair would have been not losing my parents to fever last year." Lucas stepped closer, his usual reserve giving way to something more vulnerable. "I can offer you protection, Lillian, a name that would silence the gossips." Her heart skipped. "Are you asking—" "Not for love," he clarified hastily. "I wouldn't presume. But for protection, respectability." Disappointment flashed through her, though she couldn't say why. "A marriage of convenience." "Just so," Lucas nodded. "Think on it. No rush to decide." But as winter descended on the Dakota hills, bringing howling winds and heavy snow that isolated their cabin for days at a time, Lillian found herself thinking of little else. They developed a deeper friendship, sharing stories by the fire during the long nights. Lucas taught her to shoot, to read animal tracks, to survive in the unforgiving wilderness, and somewhere between the first snow and the winter solstice, Lillian realized she'd fallen in love with the quiet trapper with gentle hands and fierce protectiveness. She didn't tell him. How could she, when he'd made it clear their arrangement would be practical, not passionate? Instead, she agreed to his proposal on a particularly bitter December night when the wind threatened to tear the roof from their shelter. "It makes sense," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "As you said, for protection." Lucas nodded, relief evident in his expression. "We'll ride to town when the pass clears, find the preacher." They married in January 1877 in Deadwood's small church, with the storekeeper and his wife as witnesses. The ceremony was brief, the words ancient and solemn. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas hesitated before placing a chaste kiss on her lips there first. As they signed the registry, Lillian's hand trembled slightly as she wrote her new name, Lillian Nash. Lucas noticed. "You've got my name now," he said quietly. "It's not much, but it's honestly earned." That night, back at their cabin, now truly theirs, Lillian prepared for bed with nervous anticipation. They had discussed the practical aspects of their arrangement, agreeing to separate sleeping areas until they adjusted to their new circumstances, as Lucas had put it. But as she braided her hair, Lucas appeared in the doorway, looking uncharacteristically uncertain.